When you think of the phrase old money as it relates to England, most commonly, you think of wealthy aristocrats operating under the radar, amassing unfathomable wealth and sumptuous estates, such as the iconic Grosvenor family, also known as the Dukes of Westminster, buying up London like their personal monopoly board, all the while maintaining a neutral political position in the public eye. Or the quietly powerful Percy family, the Dukes of Norfolk, owning vast swathes of the north of England, while simultaneously staying careful not to run afoul of the British tabloids. However, there is one British aristocratic family who has tossed that old money secrecy out of the window over the decades. They've opted to become synonymous not only with public displays of social status and the roaring 20s socialite lifestyle, but perhaps more notably, proudly tied their family name to the mast of controversial political ideologies, boasting family members who befriended none other than Adolf Hitler and Joseph Goebbels, with other siblings opting to become alleged card-carrying members of the Communist Party. In today's episode of Old Money Luxury, we tell the full story of perhaps England's most controversial Old Money dynasty, from their regal roots in the Norman conquest of 1066 to their strategic intermarriage with everyone from the Cavendishes to the Guinnesses, as we describe. The Mitfords, the old money British family that loved the Nazis and the Soviets. The iconic Mitford family, with roots dug deep into the aristocratic soil of Mitford, Northumberland, managed to shine in the British aristocracy's constellation, not so much for their vaults of gold, but for their rich historical ties and titles. And by the time the mid-20th century rolled around, having a Mitford at the helm as High Sheriff of Northumberland was almost tradition, and an emblem of their entrenched status in society. But let's talk about the real jewels in the Mitford crown. The 6 daughters of David Freeman Mitford, 2nd Baron Redesdale and Sidney Bowles, known to history as simply the Mitford sisters. You see, these ladies weren't just any English roses, they were wildflowers, thriving on the estate's margins in a series of progressively less grand homes, thanks to their father's knack for financial folly. But Nancy, Pamela, Diana, Unity, Jessica and Deborah Mitford turned this to their advantage, blooming into distinct personalities that would dazzle the literary and social scenes. Nancy Mitford, the pack's leader in wit and word, spun her upbringing into literary gold with novels like The Pursuit of Love and Love in a Cold Climate, giving the world a peek behind the velvet curtains of the English upper class. Through her eyes we got front row seats to the decadence and decline of Britain's elite, all served up with a generous helping of humour and satire. Furthermore, the Mitfords became synonymous with the bright young things, that glittering, fast-living crowd that defined London's social scene in the 1920s and 30s. Thus, their beauty and brains, mixed with a penchant for political extremes and headline-worthy romances, kept them firmly in the public eye. Indeed, these women were more than just socialites. They were influencers avant la lettre, rubbing elbows with the era's giants in politics and culture. However, their stories were laced with controversy and contradiction, each sister forging a path that veered sharply from the aristocratic expectations set before them. Notably, there was an ideological thunderbolt that split the family right down the middle, especially as the 1930s and 40s rolled in with their share of global turmoil. Unity and Diana Mitford veered sharply into fascism's embrace, with Unity buddying up to none other than Adolf Hitler and spending her days in Nazi Germany, and Diana tying the knot with Oswald Mosley, the head honcho of the British Union of Fascists. Their unwavering march alongside fascism, even as the world recoiled from World War II and the Holocaust, branded them as the family's black sheep in the eyes of both kin and country. On the flip side, Jessica Mitford played the family's wild card, chucking her aristocratic privileges for a deep dive into communism. Her bolt with Esmond Romilly, Winston Churchill's nephew and communist compadre, wasn't just a love story. It was a bold middle finger to her lineage and a hug to her ideological antithesis. Jessica's leap across the pond to champion civil rights and wield her pen as a journalist only widened the familial rift, turning the Mitford saga into a mirror, reflecting the era's seismic ideological shifts. And throughout their lives, the Mitford sisters, and family at large, had the legendary homes and estates to match their dynamic lifestyles. Nestled in the heart of the Cotswolds, Asthall Manor and Swinbrook House were more than just scenic backdrops for the Mitford saga. They were the crucibles for the sisters' unique characters and convictions. These estates, emblematic of English pastoral charm, were the stages on which the drama of the Mitford family played out, shaping the sisters in indelible ways. But let's not overlook the legendary Mitford Castle. Sprouting from the roots of an Anglo-Saxon fort, by 1138, Mitford Castle boasted the unique claim of a pentagonal keep, the only one of its kind in England. Yet it faced the wrath of King John's Flemish forces in 1215 and suffered under Scottish invasions, bearing scars as testament to its tumultuous history. And before the glitter of Mitford Hall, there was the Mitford Old Manor House, the family's erstwhile hearth. This residence, while lesser known, served as a pivotal stage for the family's early narrative, embedding itself deeply in the Mitford lore. And then, the pièce de résistance, Mitford Hall. Erected in 1828, this architectural marvel was among the first masterpieces of John Dobson, set against a canvas of 5,000 acres of verdant splendor. With 50 houses and 7 farms under its domain, Mitford Hall reigns over a majestic landscape, its gaze stretching across open fields to where the River Wansbeck murmurs secrets past the brooding ruins of Mitford Castle. These estates, far more than mere buildings or plots of land, were the crucibles of the Mitford sisters' extraordinary lives. However, in order to get a full picture of exactly how England's most controversial old money family first got their start, we'll have to go back to the Norman conquest of 1066, which is where the Mitfords got their start, like so many other aristocratic dynasties on Albion. In the turbulent wake of the Norman conquest of 1066, a new chapter began for England, a saga of power, legacy, and transformation that would etch the destinies of many noble houses into the very stone of the realm. Among these emerging titans was the Mitford family, their story unfolding under the shadow of this seismic shift in English history. Indeed, this Norman era birthed many well-known old money dynasties, such as the Percys and the Grosvenors, names that resonate through history to this very day, much like the Mitfords. As the dust settled on the battlefield, one John Mitford emerged, a figure both of his time and beyond it. With strategic acumen and a fierce will, he claimed the castle of Mitford in Northumberland, a fortress that would stand as a testament to the family's ascent. Thus, this early acquisition wasn't merely a home, it was a declaration of their lasting presence in English history. And as time marched on, the Mitfords didn't just rest on their laurels. Through marriages that would make even the most astute matchmakers blush, and the strategic gathering of titles and lands, they cemented their status among the aristocracy's elite. By the Anglo-Saxon era's end, the Mitfords weren't just a family, they were a barony, wielding influence and authority that others could only aspire to. Then, the Middle Ages threw the Mitfords into the midst of the border reivers' culture, a time of raiding and feuding that tested the mettle of many. Yet even here, amid the chaos, the Mitfords thrived, bolstering their status and laying the groundwork for future generations. The 17th century's reward came in the form of Charles II, bestowing upon them the castle and manor of Mitford, a nod to their unwavering loyalty and service to the crown. But the narrative of the Mitfords is not one to dwell solely on past glories. As the 18th and 19th centuries unfolded, figures like William Mitford, a historian and Member of Parliament, demonstrated the family's capacity for growth beyond their Northumberland roots. Therefore, William's strategic marriage and connections breathed new life into the Mitford saga, intertwining their destiny with that of the Dukes of Northumberland. These alliances were more than mere social contracts. They were the pathways to the British peerage, culminating in the creation of the Baron Redesdale title. However, the historic legacy of the Mitford family would be inextricably connected to the family's ups and downs in the 20th century, which is what we'll explore in the next chapter. During the roller coaster years of the 1930s and 1940s, the Mitford sisters Unity and Diana cut a swath through the political extremes of the time with a verve that could only be termed Mitfordian. Unity Mitford's deep-seated adoration for Adolf Hitler and her escapades in Nazi Germany, coupled with Diana's union to Oswald Mosley, the figurehead of the British Union of Fascists, painted a vivid picture of political divergence that left an indelible mark on their family's name and their personal trajectories. And Unity's dalliance with Hitler transcended the bounds of mere fascination. She was a fixture in his inner sanctum, sharing his company upwards of 140 times. In fact, Such was her fervor that she was bequeathed a golden swastika insignia by Hitler himself and enjoyed the privilege of a reserved box at the 1936 Berlin Olympics. Furthermore, her allegiance to Hitler and his cause was so entrenched that the outbreak of war between Britain and Germany drove her to an attempt at taking her own life, an act that resulted in a bullet permanently lodged in her brain, impairing her mental faculties until her demise in 1948. And Diana Mitford's engagement with fascism was no less pronounced, crystallizing through her marriage to Oswald Mosley. Their nuptials, officiated in the domicile of Nazi minister Joseph Goebbels and graced by Hitler, was an unambiguous pledge of their political stance. Diana's commitment to fascist ideologies remained steadfast, even under the shadow of wartime internment alongside Mosley, regarded as a greater public threat than her spouse. Despite the ignominy and the personal adversities that followed, including imprisonment, Diana's unwavering support for fascism and her peculiar loyalty to Hitler remained intact. And while Unity and Diana reveled in their notoriety, their brother, Thomas Mitford, also exhibited a flirtation with Nazism, albeit with less public scrutiny. His particular interest underscored the Mitford family's entanglement with extreme political ideologies, fueling public intrigue and controversy over their scandal-ridden and politically polarizing existence. In stark contrast, Jessica Mitford, another sibling, charted a course replete with rebellion, activism, and literary achievement that veered sharply from the right-wing radicalism of Unity and Diana. Jessica, affectionately dubbed Decca, rebelled against her aristocratic roots early, embracing communist sympathies and socialism, and dedicating herself to the cause of social justice and reform. Her defiance was epitomized by her elopement at age 19 with Esmond Romilly to engage in the Spanish Civil War, marking a bold departure from her sister's affiliations. This rebellious streak led her to the United States with Romilly, where she faced widowhood during World War II, but found love anew with radical lawyer Robert Treuhaft. Together, they faced the McCarthy-era's challenges head-on, steadfast in their refusal to betray their communist affiliations. Jessica's literary career, highlighted by The American Way of Death, her seminal critique of the funeral industry, and other works exposing American societal flaws, distinguished her as a muckraking journalist committed to unearthing and addressing social injustices. Therefore, Jessica Mitford's life story sets her apart from her infamous fascist sisters and adds a wonderfully complex layer to this already iconic old money British dynasty. And yet, there are more sisters to investigate who would leave an unforgettable legacy on the literary field themselves. In the pantheon of English literature, Nancy Mitford not only secured a distinguished spot, but also sprinkled it with her characteristic humor. You see, Mitford wielded her pen to craft novels that were as much a playful jab at her own social circles as they were a vivid showcase of her narrative prowess. And the crowning jewel of Mitford's oeuvre, The Pursuit of Love, hit the shelves in 1945 and immediately captivated the public with its tale of Linda Radlett's quixotic ventures into love. This novel, steeped in the peculiarities of Mitford's own family dynamics, offered readers a humorous yet poignant exploration of the quest for affection among the English gentry. Indeed, its success was meteoric, with sales soaring to 200,000 copies within the year of its release, cementing its status as a beloved staple in the literary world. Not resting on her laurels, Mitford presented Love in a Cold Climate 4 years later, shifting the lens to Polly Hampton, a figure of beauty and social grace. Through the familiar voice of Fanny, who also narrates The Pursuit of Love, this novel traverses the landscape of love, matrimonial aspirations, and the lofty expectations of upper-crust society, with Mitford's trademark incisive humor and keen observation. And while Nancy Mitford became a literary star, her sisters Deborah and Pamela charted courses that, though more subdued, were equally impactful in their own right. Deborah, the youngest of the Mitford siblings, embraced her role as the Duchess of Devonshire with vigor, dedicating herself to the revival of Chatsworth House. Her efforts not only salvaged a key piece of England's architectural heritage, but also opened its splendor to the public, earning her recognition as a steward of cultural legacy. Pamela, the most introspective of the Mitford sisters, chose a life far removed from the limelight and the political storms that often engulfed her family. Her private existence, while not as publicly documented, offers a glimpse into the quieter, perhaps deeper currents of the Mitford family narrative. Thus, the other Mitford sisters, each in her unique way, have woven their threads into the fabric of English cultural and social life. Nancy, with her satirical insights into the absurdities and intricacies of aristocratic existence, and Deborah, through her dedication to heritage conservation, highlight the diverse legacy of a family that continues to fascinate and inspire. With such an illustrious and contrasting family dynamic, surely we'd love to know what the current living descendants are up to. With that said, let us get an update on the living Mitford family members in the next chapter. In British aristocracy, few names sparkle with the lustre of Peregrine Andrew Morley Cavendish, the 12th Duke of Devonshire. With a lineage that intertwines with the country's history, his life story reads almost like a novel from a more genteel era, albeit with modern twists. Born on the 27th of April 1944, at the illustrious Chatsworth House in Derbyshire, England, he emerged as the sole surviving son of Andrew Cavendish, the 11th Duke, and none other than Deborah Mitford, the youngest of the Mitford sisters. And it is against the vivid backdrop of his mother and aunt's fame that the Duke, affectionately dubbed Stoker, ascended to prominence following his father's passing in May 2004. However, his pre-ducal titles of Earl of Burlington and Marquess of Hartington were but stepping stones to the storied Cavendish legacy, his paternal family, whose roots and influence in British society stretch back to the 16th century. Under his stewardship, the Cavendish fortune, conservatively pegged at £905 million, and the stewardship of Chatsworth House, a jewel in the crown of England's cultural heritage, continue to thrive. Beyond the walls of his ancestral home, the Duke's impact is felt in various spheres, including his roles as Chancellor of the University of Derby and Her Majesty's representative at Ascot. And Deborah Cavendish, or Mitford, his mother, played a pivotal role in the renaissance of Chatsworth House, transforming it into a beacon of cultural and commercial success through her visionary enhancements to its gardens and the expansion of its retail and dining facilities. Another notable figure with Mitford ties is Jonathan Bryan Guinness, the third Baron Moyne. As the son of Diana Mitford, Jonathan's life narrative is equally imbued with both the privilege and the complexities inherent to his heritage. Also born into the Guinness brewing dynasty in March 1930, his journey has been marked by diverse business pursuits and his fair share of controversy, notably his acquittal in a Swedish financial scandal involving Truster. Yet, it's not just the boardroom battles that define him. His advocacy for the Falun Gong movement and his tenure as a non-executive director of Guinness plc speak to a broader engagement with world affairs. And his literary foray, a detailed account of the distiller's takeover scandal, offers a rare glimpse into the corporate drama that once threatened to estrange the Guinness family from their ancestral enterprise. Among these, Jasmine Leonora Guinness emerges as a beacon of style and entrepreneurial spirit. Born in September 1976 to Patrick Guinness and Liz Casey, Jasmine not only carries the legacy of the Guinness brewing empire, but also the unforgettable mark of the Mitford lineage through her great-grandmother, Diana Mitford. Educated in the arts and propelled by her heritage, she carved a niche for herself in the fashion industry, stepping onto the scene in 1994 and eventually founding the whimsical toy shop Honey Jam in the heart of London's Portobello Road in 2006. Her nuptials to Gawain O'Dare Rainey in 2006, festooned with the presence of notable personalities, and her role as a mother to three, underscore the personal joys and commitments behind her public persona. Professionally, Jasmine has lent her visage to brands like Armani and Shu Uemura, and her familial legacy was celebrated in events like the Arthur's Day festivities, paying homage to her ancestor, Arthur Guinness. But the narrative of the Mitford sisters, known for their dazzling beauty, controversial political stances, and literary prowess, also finds a continuation in Jasmine's endeavors. Blending the glamour of fashion with the gravitas of history, and Max Rufus Mosley, another scion of the Mitford legacy, navigated a path distinct from Jasmine's, yet equally compelling. Born to Oswald Mosley, the British fascist leader, and Diana Mitford, Max's life was shadowed by his parents' notorious past. However, he carved out a distinctive legacy as a lawyer, racing driver, and later as the president of the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile, where his advocacy for safety reforms in motorsport and his role in transforming Formula One into a global spectacle underscored a life dedicated to innovation and change. Despite his achievements, Max's life was not without controversy, including a landmark legal battle for privacy that highlighted his complex relationship with his family's history. And last, African-American academic James Forman Jr.'s lineage introduces another fascinating pattern of the Mitford narrative. The grandson of Jessica Mitford, James's career as a legal scholar and his book, Locking Up Our Own: Crime and Punishment in Black America, which won the 2018 Pulitzer Prize for General Nonfiction, reflect a commitment to social justice that mirrors the activism of his parents, James Forman Sr. and Mitford family member, Constancia Romilly. His co-founding of the Maya Angelou School in Washington, D.C. further exemplifies a life dedicated to activism and advocacy. Therefore, these living descendants of the Mitford family, each pursuing distinct paths, underscore the enduring impact of their heritage. From fashion and philanthropy to motorsport reform and legal scholarship, their lives reflect a diverse yet interconnected legacy that continues to influence and inspire across generations and fields. And now, we'd like to see you in the comments. Which aristocratic British family would you like us to cover next? We always love hearing from you, and we try to base every video we do on your direct feedback. We'll see you below with your thoughts. And thanks again for joining us on another episode of Old Money Luxury. Cheers until next time.